Well, the thing about the English language, see, is that it is very rare for someone to explicitly refuse something in real life by saying the word no. Hey humans, I'm Amanda Montell, and this is The Dirty Word, where sex and language get it on. Today I want to talk about a slightly more serious topic, in light of all of the discussions happening in our country right now surrounding sexual harassment and assault. What I want to do is sort of analyze some of the less than perfect language that our culture tends to use to address these topics, and then hopefully offer some insight as to what we can do better. So generally there tends to be two attitudes, in the US at least, surrounding ideas of sexual harassment or manipulation, and that can include anything from catcalling to unwelcome sexual advances in the workplace, to even something like a male coworker calling a female coworker something like sweetheart or young lady. First, there's the perspective mostly shared by dudes who commit sexual harassment, that women too often misinterpret their intentions, that they really meant no harm, and that women need to stop being so sensitive. They're the good guys, and they don't deserve to be complained about or have their reputation tarnished because of a little playful, harmless sexual banter. Then there's the perspective, mostly shared by women, some women, that men just don't get it, that they'll never understand how hurtful sexual harassment and assault really is because they'll never be a woman. And third, there are the approaches that our culture uses to prevent or combat sexual assault. We hear a lot about the teachings of consent. We demand that women say no. We repeat these sort of tautologies like yes means yes and no means no. And we say that men need to recognize that there needs to be explicit verbal consent before they can go ahead and pursue someone sexually. So I find problems with all of this. First of all, there's the discussion of why exactly it's fucked up for a man to make little sexual comments, even if they're compliments, toward a woman that they don't know or that they work with, or for a man in a bar, let's say, to slide past a woman and, sort of put his hands on her hips as he moves by, which happens all the time and is something that I hate, and I'm sure many other women agree. These are obviously subtler examples of sexual trespassing, I want to say. Obviously being groped or explicitly threatened is worse. But the fundamental problem with all of these actions is that they rely on the assumption that a dude has an automatic right to a woman's body. It's a display of power, and it's a signal to women that they are guests. They are interlopers in this world owned by men. It's an over-familiarity, and the reason why even something like a dude calling a female colleague sweetheart is offensive is because it demonstrates the idea that a dude has an inherent access to a woman's sexuality, and that reduces her to an object, drawing the focus away from any of her other more relevant or impressive identities. She could be the CEO of a company, have an IQ of 180. She could be a prosecutor in a courtroom making her case. But the second the male defense attorney calls her young lady, all of that is taken away. This is not something that happens to only women. Our culture has a long history of treating marginalized groups of people, people of color, people of lower socioeconomic class, with an overfamiliarity. And it's not a sign of affection or something that the recipient should feel flattered by, because really it's this power move signaling that they're of subordinate status. It's a signal that the dominant figure has a right to treat them that way, which is disrespectful and ultimately an enemy to equality. So then, back to the scenarios of sexual harassment in particular, if a woman does object, which she is not supposed to do, because she is just supposed to be an object in these scenarios like a puck in a hockey game. So when she does report it, and by some miracle she is believed and the dude is confronted, he will likely make some sort of excuse about his intention. I didn't mean anything by it, it's just a joke, like, this is harmless, don't be so sensitive. Dudes in this position act totally naive to the idea that what they've done is degrading at best, and at worst, threatening and terrifying. But studies of rapists and sexual harassers, I was just reading one the other day from 2002 by a scholar named Beth Quinn, reveal that when men are asked to empathize with women, they fully understand the harm of their actions. The second you ask one of these dudes to switch places mentally with the person they're doing whatever they're doing to, they fully get that it's concerning and scary. So it's not as if men just don't get it, it's simply that they're not motivated to care. And that, fundamentally, has to do with how our culture teaches men to be men. See, our standards of masculinity, in Western culture, generally speaking, require that a dude be powerful and almost exhaustingly heterosexual, and unlike femininity at all costs. That scholar Beth Quinn wrote back in 2002 that men learn that to effectively perform masculinity and to protect a masculine identity, they must, in many instances, ignore a woman's pain and obscure her viewpoint. Men fail to exhibit empathy with women because masculinity precludes them from taking the position of the feminine other, and men's moral stance vis-a-vis women is attenuated by this lack of empathy. So this leads me to why some of our current discussions about consent and no means no are imperfect. By teaching women that to prevent sexual assault they must say no, once again puts the power in the dude's arena, because it presupposes the idea that the men are the people doing the asking, the people who are wanting the sex, and women are just like these dainty little people, and their only job is to say yes or no. And when she doesn't say no, then that's her fault, because how could a man otherwise know that she didn't want it? Well, the thing about the English language, see, is that it is very rare for someone to explicitly refuse something in real life by saying the word no. A linguist named Deborah Cameron has pointed out that in-depth analyses of real-life refusals show that there is a formula that English speakers use when we want to refuse something in a socially acceptable way. It goes hesitate, hedge, express regret, and then give some sort of culturally appropriate excuse. As in, well, I'd love to, but I have to go home and finish this paper. Or, I'm sorry, but I'm not drinking this week, so I'm sorry. The other funny thing about language is that it is literally our job as listeners to make inferences about what a speaker really means, regardless of whether something is said in the most clear, direct, robotic way. Think of how strange it would be to decline an invitation out to coffee from a friend just with a no. Like, it would be insane. Not to mention, in a sexual assault scenario, giving a blunt no might create more tension and possibly danger. When we teach women to say no and men to listen for no, we are letting these men off the hook. We are taking away their duty to use common sense in language, so that later, when they are accused of some sort of harassment or assault and they say, oh, well, she didn't say no, how am I supposed to read women's minds? We go, oh yeah, well, you're right, if she didn't say no. Not to mention, as we've already learned, men actually don't need an explicit no. They already get that what they're doing causes harm. They just don't care, because our culture teaches them that they don't have to. In a perfect world, of course, sex would be something that was equally desired and agreed upon, and there would be no fear or anxiety surrounding it, and there would be no need for a yes-no verbal transaction. The way to get to that world is not by teaching women how to protect themselves, but by teaching men, ideally from very early on, that women's bodies do not belong to dudes. When men are little boys, we as parents and teachers have to dismantle our culture's standards of masculinity as we know them at every turn. It has to be okay to empathize with women. It has to be okay to display your emotions outwardly. It has to be okay not to be the most heterosexual man on the planet. And it has to be not okay to treat women as intruders in your world. With adult men, these lessons can be a little bit harder to teach because those standards of masculinity have already been set. I was actually just reading online, I forget where, that now there are a number of multi-week courses that men can take on the evils of patriarchy and toxic masculinity and how they can undo that sort of thing within themselves, and these classes are taught by like a fun male professor that they can relate to, so that's an option. Another option for men who do care about women and respect women and don't want to be grouped in with the sexual assailants is to confront people, their friends, their coworkers, when they are exhibiting misogynist behavior. Like, it isn't brave to tell the internet or the women in your life that you're a good guy and sexual assault is wrong. What's better is to tell the people you see doing it right there in the moment, because they're gonna be more likely to listen to you. That would be more helpful. And as for what women can do, yes, of course, use your voice if you're compelled to. Stand up for yourself and say me too if that feels right, but also know that the solution to this problem does not rest so heavily on your shoulders. This is a problem with masculinity, not with women. And the sooner we can all realize that, the sooner it can get better. Thank you all so much for watching this episode of The Dirty Word. I would love to hear your thoughts on these topics, so please leave me a comment below. And remember, stay dirty.